Anunnaki's Legend of the Alien Gods. Full documentary. In time immemorial, long before human history was recorded, the Anunnaki gods, mysterious beings from the depths of the cosmos, came to Earth. This ancient tale begins in the distant skies of the Nibiru solar system, where the Anunnaki, led by the wise Enki and the stern Enlil, were facing a major crisis. Their planet was on the brink of ecological disaster, and their only hope for salvation was to find vital resources elsewhere in the galaxy. After much searching, the Anunnaki discovered Earth, a planet rich in gold and other precious minerals. Enki, known for his intelligence and creativity, was the first to set foot on Earth, closely followed by his brother, Enlil. Together, they began exploiting the Earth's resources, but soon faced a major problem. The work was hard and exhausting, and the Anunnaki, being few in number, could not sustain such an effort over the long term. Enki, seeing the suffering of his people, came up with a revolutionary solution. By proposing to create a new species through genetic engineering, one that could work in place of the Anunnaki, Enki opened the way for a new chapter in Earth's history. Together with Ninhursag, the master of genetics, Enki combined the DNA of the Anunnaki with that of the primitive hominids of Earth, thus giving birth to the first humans. Enlil, however, did not take kindly to this experiment. He believed that this new species, which they called Lulu Amalu, primitive man, could become a threat to Anunnaki supremacy. Tensions between Enki and Enlil grew, turning into open conflict, a war between two visions of humanity's destiny. As humans multiplied and began to populate the Earth, Enlil began to fear their unchecked potential. He decided to impose strict laws and limit the knowledge that people could acquire. Enki, on the other hand, felt a deep affection for his creations and wanted to give them a chance to evolve and reach their potential. The conflict between the two brothers came to a head when Enlil, in an attempt to end human existence, unleashed a great flood. Enki, secretly warning a man named Utnapishtim, the equivalent of Noah in Sumerian mythology, gave him instructions to build an ark, thus saving some of humanity and various animal species. After the flood, the Anunnaki decided to leave Earth, leaving behind a human species that was beginning to forge its own path in history. Enki and Enlil, realizing that the destiny of the people was no longer in their hands, left with mixed feelings, Enki with the hope that humanity would prosper and achieve wisdom, and Enlil with the worry that humanity might repeat the mistakes of the Anunnaki. Thus, the legend of the Anunnaki, the extraterrestrial gods who shaped the fate of humanity, remained alive in the myths and legends of ancient peoples, inspiring entire generations to wonder about our most distant origins and the mystery of life in the universe. Divine Sibling War Part 1. In ancient times, when the heavens were still an unwritten mystery and the earth a wild land, the Anunnaki gods walked among the stars, seeking salvation for their world. Among these gods were Enki and Enlil, two brothers with different visions of destiny, whose conflicts would shape human history. Chapter 1: Brotherhood Divided. Enki, the god of wisdom and waters, with a heart full of compassion for all life forms, and Enlil, lord of the winds and air, a strict and unyielding ruler, looked down on earth together from their high heaven. The blue planet shone like a jewel in the darkness of space, promising salvation for Nibiru, their home world on the brink of collapse. Enki, with hopeful eyes, saw on Earth an opportunity to explore and create, while Enlil, concerned with the survival of their people, saw only the resources needed to save Nibiru. Together, they descended on Earth, establishing bases and beginning to exploit its riches. Chapter 2: Seeds of Discord. As the work progressed, the Anunnaki, tired and exhausted, began to murmur against the royal brothers. Enki, moved by their suffering, proposed an unexpected solution: the creation of a new species to take over the burden of the work. Enlil, however, viewed this plan with suspicion and fear, seeing in this new creature a possible threat to his order and authority. Chapter 3: Fire of Conflict. Tensions rose, turning into open warfare between Enki and Enlil. Enki, supported by those who wanted freedom and innovation, and Enlil, defended by conservatives who feared change, divided the Anunnaki into two camps. The war between them was not only an armed conflict, but also one of ideas and principles. Chapter 4: The Battle for Earth. The battles between the two factions shook the heavens and the earth with advanced technologies and divine powers. On Earth's battlefields, the Anunnaki demonstrated their might as primitive humanity looked on in awe and horror. Chapter 5: Ninhursag's Intervention. As the war intensified, Ninhursag, goddess of earth and life, sister of Enki and Enlil, intervened. She saw the destruction her brothers were bringing and decided to act to end the conflict. Ninhursag called a council of the gods, asking them to find a solution to restore peace. Chapter 6: Armistice. After much discussion and negotiation, Enki and Enlil reached a truce. They recognized that war between them would only bring suffering and destruction to both the Anunnaki and Earth. They agreed to work together for the common good, ending the conflict and ushering in a new era of collaboration. Chapter 7: Reconstruction and the Promise. In the aftermath of the war, the Anunnaki worked to rebuild what had been destroyed and establish a new order on Earth. Enki and Enlil, now united in purpose, vowed to guide and protect this new world they had so profoundly influenced. Chapter 8: The Legacy. The war between Enki and Enlil left a deep mark on the history of the Earth and on the consciousness of mankind. The stories and myths about these gods and their battles were passed down from generation to generation, becoming part of the cultural heritage of humanity. Conclusion: the war between Enki and Enlil, with all the suffering and destruction it brought, was ultimately a catalyst for change and evolution. It paved the way for a new era on Earth, one where the Anunnaki and humans could coexist and learn from each other. Divine Sibling War Part 2. Chapter 9: Balance Restored. After the truce, Enki and Enlil, along with the other Anunnaki, began to repair the damage caused by their war. Balance was restored to Earth, and the Anunnaki began to turn their attention to managing and guiding the new human species that Enki had created. Chapter 10: The Rise of Mankind. Humans, created through Enki's ingenuity and Ninhursag's help, began to multiply and assume increasingly complex roles in their society. Under the guidance of the Anunnaki, they learned agriculture, crafts, and sciences, developing their own cultures and civilizations. Chapter 11: Enki's Wisdom. Enki, seeing the potential of mankind, decided to impart knowledge and wisdom to them. He gave people the gift of writing and mathematics, paving the way for a bright future. However, Enlil remained cautious, fearing that humans might become too powerful. Chapter 12: Shadows of Discord. Despite the apparent peace, tensions between Enki and Enlil had not completely disappeared. Enlil, still worried about the possible threat humans posed, began to place restrictions on their knowledge and freedom. This led to new conflicts, this time not only between gods, but also between humans. Chapter 13: Human Revolt. Influenced by Enlil's restrictions and inspired by Enki's teachings, some of the people began to revolt. They demanded more freedom and access to knowledge, wanting to determine their own destiny. This revolt presented the Anunnaki with a dilemma: suppress the revolt or allow humanity to go its own way. Chapter 14: Enlil's Decision. Enlil, seeing the revolt of the people, decided to intervene. He sent a devastating flood to cleanse the earth of mankind and start anew. However, Enki, secretly on the side of the humans, warned them and gave them the means to survive. Chapter 15: Survival and Rebirth. Utnapishtim, a wise and devout man, received Enki's instructions and built a huge ark, saving some of humanity and the animal species. The flood came, but the people survived, thanks to Enki's help. Chapter 16: New Understandings. After the flood, Enlil realized that he could not control the destiny of mankind and that his brutal interventions only brought suffering. He accepted the existence of humans and began to respect them as beings capable of their own choices. Chapter 17: Covenant of the Gods. Enki and Enlil, along with the other Anunnaki, made a covenant not to interfere directly in the affairs of men. They decided to gradually withdraw from the earthly world, leaving humanity to take its own course. Chapter 18: The Eternal Legacy. The Anunnaki left behind a deep legacy, knowledge, myths, and legends that shaped human civilizations for millennia. The stories of Enki and Enlil, of the creation of men and of the divine wars, were passed down from generation to generation, inspiring mankind to seek answers to the deepest questions about its origin and destiny. Conclusion. The story of the war between Enki and Enlil and the creation of men is a story of conflict and reconciliation, of mistakes and lessons, and of the extraordinary power of hope and compassion. It's a story that reminds us that no matter what challenges we face, we have the power to change, evolve, and thrive. Anunnaki or extraterrestrial gods have been mentioned more and more often in various conspiracy theories, brought into the picture by Zecharia Sitchin's bestseller, Genesis Revisited. In his book, Sitchin did extensive research on ancient mythologies and studied the megalithic ruins left behind by various civilizations. In his books, Sitchin wants to prove that this alien race has genetically modified humans for several reasons. Sitchin's theory won many followers, who developed it even more, finding evidence of the existence of these extraterrestrials all over the world, both in the past and in the present. The theory is based on the Sumero-Babylonian gods, the Anunnaki, as aliens from the planet Nibiru, the 12th planet. Although the theory of extraterrestrial gods sounds like sci-fi, the transformation of gods into beings and vice versa is a psychological phenomenon of people that has been observed and reported since the time of the ancient Greek philosophers and is called euhemerism after the Greek philosopher Euhemeros, 300 AD. Euhemerism states that the gods were in fact kings, queens, heroes, whose deeds were transformed into stories and legends, most of the time with great deviations from reality. So the Anunnaki theory is actually a euhemerism of our times, which tries to explain the miraculous phenomena of the ancient legends through the advanced technologies of an extraterrestrial race. The ancient astronaut theory. The researcher Charles Fort dedicated his whole life to the study of various ancient texts, drawings, and constructions, and identified a series of anomalies and mysteries contrary to the perceptions of reality, be they scientific or religious. In an attempt to explain these anomalies of history, a large number of writers they came up with different theories. One of these theories is that of the ancient astronaut created by the Swiss writer Erich von Däniken. At first the theory was ridiculed, but later it found followers such as Zecharia Sitchin. The theory is based on a Sumerian drawing with a figure that resembles a modern-day astronaut. Due to the fact that Sitchin was one of the few researchers who understood and deciphered Sumerian writing, the theory gained credibility for many of Sitchin's followers. The making of Anunnaki legend. Zecharia Sitchin tries to distort reality, to interpret the customs and traditions of the ancient Sumerians for the benefit of his theory. In reality, however, there is no need to create these interpretations because the Sumerians themselves said that their gods were planets and not people, and their stories are myths that contain characters who interpret these heavenly bodies. A reference work in ancient mythology is Occidental Mythology, written by Joseph Campbell, who after extensive research affirms in his work that biblical phenomena such as the Exodus of Moses are nothing more than simple legends, and as far as Greek, Germanic or Celtic mythology is concerned, even they said, just like the Sumerians, that the events are stories and the characters only interpret certain beliefs. Certainly, ancient mythology is not as interesting as the possibility that in the past a species of extraterrestrials interacted with the human species, hence the increased interest in this theory. The astral belief of the ancients. In antiquity, people were not as stupid and naive as they are presented in many materials, but surprisingly advanced. They developed over tens of generations. They had developed a complex astronomical system in which they followed the movement of various celestial bodies. These astral observations were developed by all ancient civilizations. Life itself was ordered according to the movements of the stars, according to the rotational movement of the Earth, the movement of the moon in relation to the Earth, or the movement of the moon in relation to the sun. Based on these astral observations, agriculture and navigation were developed. As people were dependent on agriculture, it is not surprising that they came to worship the stars, with the help of which they knew when to sow and when to harvest. What Sitchin does is only to interpret these legends in order to create an interesting story, an aspect that is not at all in favor of these people who in the past, with the help of their knowledge, managed to push civilization forward. For example, the Sumerians mentioned the Anunnaki as the guardians of the 7 gates through which the Son of God had to pass in the world beyond. The Anunnaki were also spirits of the earth. There is no point in interpreting a legend that from the very beginning did not want to be anything but a legend. People in the past were simply not so naive as to confuse a planet with a man and vice versa. The Sumerian culture did not appear suddenly, but developed slowly, gradually. Many discoveries were made related to this civilization, one of the most important being the city of Ur, which was discovered at the end of the 19th century. But the culture did not disappear, it slowly transformed, only the writings and beliefs were forgotten original. From the cuneiform texts discovered, it is known that the Sumerian gods of 3,500 years ago were Enlil/Elul, Utu/Shamash, Marduk/Merodach, Gilgamesh, Nana/Sin, Inanna/Ishtar, Ea/Enki, Dumuzi/Tammuz. Some of these deities are mentioned among those called Anunnaki and/or Ijiji. The Anunnaki deities are said to be 7, 50, or 900. None of these characters is a historical person, because as I said before, even the Sumero-Babylonians said about them that they represent the planets. Then the sun and the moon were included among the planets. Catholic Encyclopedia says about Babel that the step tower Burj Nimrud had 7 platforms colored in 7 colors: black, white, yellow, blue, red, silver, and gold, and they worshipped in the same order the astral gods Adar, Saturn, Ishtar, Venus, Merodach, Jupiter, Nebo, Mercury, Nergal, Mars, Sin, Lunar, Shamash, Sun. Enlil/Elul/Bel. King of the Anunnaki, Enlil is the god of storm and wind, also known as Bel or Baal in some biblical texts that attribute him to the sun god among the Canaanites. Enlil and Ninlil gave birth to the god Nana, who represents the moon, a very important deity of the Sumerians, known as Sin to the Babylonians. Sin is also mentioned in the Bible, where it is said that he was the deity worshipped in Ur and Haran. Obviously, however, neither Sin nor his parents are real persons or extraterrestrials. Sin/Shamash. The moon god, Sin, is the father of Smash, the Babylonian sun god, worshipped in the past by the Israelites. Sun in Hebrew means Shamash. The sun god Shamash was called the sublime judge of the Anunnaki. Enki/Her. The son of Enki/Ea was the commander of the Anunnaki or god of the waters, called Marduk/Merodach or Mordecai in the biblical book of Ishtar. Marduk is also mentioned as King Ijiji. Marduk was the supreme god of the Babylonians and represented the planet Jupiter, although in some later texts he is referred to as Bel-Marduk and also embodies the sun god. One of the 50 names of Marduk is Nibiru or Nibiru, which can be similar to the Egyptian term Nebharu, which means sun god. Among the Egyptians, this god Haru is represented as a falcon with open wings and a sphere on his head, representing the sun. Instead of representing the 12th planet mentioned by Sitchin, reference is made to Nibiru or personified Nebo as a hero who represented the sun, and is similar to Moses from the Bible. Nibiru is often drawn as a winged disk. As for the 12th planet, until today astronomers could not find it, so it most likely does not exist. Gilgamesh. The demigod Gilgamesh is represented as fighting the astral bull and is often found in the Persians as the god Mitra, also depicted killing a bull. Gilgamesh is to some extent similar to the Greek demigod Hercules because he, like Hercules, goes through a lot of heroic adventures described in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Inanna/Ishtar. The goddess Inanna is attributed to the planet Venus, the constellation Virgo, sometimes the moon or even the earth. The Babylonians said that she is one of the 7 who decide fate. There are also similarities with the Greek deity Hades, the god of the underworld, who allowed Persephone to go out into the world again to create spring. Inanna allowed the god Dumuzi/Tammuz to stay in the underworld for only 6 months a year to create the seasons summer and winter. Dumuzi/Tammuz. One of the last Anunnaki was the shepherd god Tammuz, who was also worshipped in Jerusalem as the book of Ezekiel says, 8:14. In Babylonia reference is made to Tammuz as being inside the garden of Edina or Eridu, Here grew a black vine. It was a wonderful place, right next to the abyss. In the wonderful house, which is like a forest with many shadows, neither a man does not venture into its midst. In its midst is the god Tammuz, between the mouths of the river on both sides. The seventh hell. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Anunnaki appear as follows. The flood, Nergal broke down the dams of the lower waters, Ninurta the king of war removed the dams, and the seven judges of hell, the Anunnaki, with their torches, set the earth on fire with living fire. The lower waters represent heaven, and the Anunnaki were the judges who decided the fate of the earth and the bearers of light in the night sky. They are also referred to as the seven lower spheres, as Barbara G. Walker reports in the Woman's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. The seven devils exorcised from Mary Magdalene seem to have been the seven Moskimi or Anunnaki, Sumero-Akkadian spirits of the seven lower spheres, born of the goddess Mari. An Akkadian tablet said about them that there are seven. There are seven deep in the ocean. The heavens ring seven. Walker also says in the Woman's Dictionary of Symbols and Sacred Objects. The universe was perceived in antiquity as a set of crystal domes, placed one on top of the other, and the earth was in the middle of these domes. This system was designed to explain how the stars remained fixed while the planets moved in relation to the earth. The spheres were from inside to outside, correlated with the days of the week, the sphere of the moon, the sphere of Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, and the sphere of the sun. The last sphere, the eighth, was the highest heaven and the home of the supreme God. Corollary to this theory, it was also believed that there were seven inner spheres of the earth, the seven hells, towards which Dumuzi and Inanna, Tammuz and Ishtar traveled. The seven gates of the seven hells were guarded by the seven Anunnaki or Moskim, the counterparts of the planetary spirits. According to an Akkadian magical tablet, they started from the depths of the ocean, from the most hidden places. The first Christians believed that human souls descend from the highest heaven, taking a sin from each of the seven spheres they encountered, desire from Venus, anger from Mars, and so on. After death, if the soul was Christianized, he believed that he leaves all his sins in the seven planetary spheres to finally reach back to the highest heaven. The ancients therefore believed about the Anunnaki that they are the opposite image of the seven planetary spheres, the seven lower spheres, the mirrored image of the seven planets. This motif of the seven judges is also found in Slavic mythology, where they are clearly identified with the planets. Anunnaki is a generic term for gods, especially demigods, and could be translated as gods of heaven and earth. Anu means sky and represents the god of the sky, and Ki means earth, and can be interpreted as the god of the earth. Conclusion. In reality, mythology should not be taken as a historical document. It is obvious that the ancients who created these myths actually knew the universe and its laws much better. Even the architecture, art, writing, and traditions of these ancient Sumero-Babylonian, Indian, Egyptian, Chaldean, Phoenician, Canaanite cultures show a degree of development even superior to those that followed them. In reality, in terms of cosmic knowledge, it can be said that man has regressed because he interpreted, and still interprets, ancient myths as truthful facts. It can be seen that all religions were based on the veneration of the planets and especially the sun. Even the most widespread faith today, Christianity, is based on these ancient beliefs. The first trumpet. And the first angel sounded, and there arose hail and fire mingled with blood, and they fell to the earth, and he burned up a third part of the earth, and he burned up a third part of the trees, and the green grass burned up all. Revelation 8:7. When the first trumpet is sounded, nature, the garden, in proportion to 1/3, will be destroyed by blood and fire. This first stage refers to a war that once started destroys trees, grass, animals by fire. The blood shed by men will bathe the desolation produced by atomic bombs dropped from high in the sky. The second trumpet. Then the second angel sounded, and like a great mountain burning with fire it fell into the sea, and the third part of the sea was turned into blood. Revelation 8:8. The second stage preceding the apocalypse refers to the destruction of a great mountain, which can be interpreted as the destruction of a nation or even a continent. The millions of people who will die in the war mentioned in the first stage, with their blood will turn the oceans from blue to red. The third trumpet. And the third angel sounded, and a huge star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on the fountains of waters. Revelation 8 verse 10. The star that will fall from the sky is called absence, and it will turn sweet waters into toxic waters. People will no longer be able to survive, and over a third of them will die. The fourth trumpet. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so that the third part of them was darkened, and the day lost a third part of its light, and the night likewise. Revelation 8 verse 12. The fourth sign is given by planetary changes. The sun will be affected, and so will the moon and the stars, and the day will lose its light, as will the night. At this stage, the sky will turn black and the sun will no longer be visible. Fifth trumpet. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth, and the key to the well of the deep was given to him. Revelation 9.1. Now is the time when one of the angels flies through the air and warns that the end is near. This fallen star will open the well from the depths, whose smoke will darken the entire planet. This fountain can be compared to a volcano whose eruption will be so strong that the light of the sun will not be seen for a long time. The sixth trumpet. And the sixth angel sounded. And I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Revelation 9:13. This represents the second wave of the end and the time when the four angels will be released. This release will be synonymous with the clash of several armies totaling over 200 million soldiers. Interestingly, these soldiers are riding horses with lion heads and snake tails. From here we can deduce the genetic changes that will exist in the world, but also the fact that humanity will no longer take into account the idea of creation. As a result of this confrontation, millions of people will die, and the final act is closer than ever, according to Objective Info. The seventh trumpet. But, in the days when the seventh angel will speak, when he will blow the trumpet, then the mystery of God will be fulfilled, as he has announced to his servants, the prophets. Revelation 10.7. What do you think about these things?